There you go.
All right, so who have I got? I've got 1, 2, 3.
Mr. Caraselli, can you hear me?
I really can hear you, yes.
There we go. Thank you. We can hear you now. Wonderful. All right. I believe, Chairman Lucy, that we have a quorum and that we have all of the members on our call. We're still waiting, I believe, for Mayor Sheevy, but that's the only one we're waiting.
I'm here.
Oh.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. It is 9 o'clock. Should we get this beautiful show on the road for a wonderful Thursday morning? I mean, nothing better to do than let's get into some good old-fashioned RSCVA business. So, well, I hope everybody is doing well and safe and healthy out there in digital Zoom village. You know, obviously we are moving to phase 2 tomorrow, so that's always a good thing. We'll get some more businesses open and looking forward to opening our casinos on June 4th. We've been working hard with the casinos to make sure that they've got plans and everything and all the properties are ready to go with testing and getting their stuff online with it. So that's been a good week for that. So with that, we will call to those are just my little previous start notes, but with that, we'll call to order the regular meeting of the Reno Sparks Convention and Visitors Authority. And this is Thursday, May 28th. And with that, Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, Mr. Caraselli.
Here.
Mr. Chapman.
Here.
Mr. Kornstein.
Here.
Ms. Keel.
Here.
Mr. Lawson.
Here.
Chairman Lucy.
Here.
Mayor Sheevy.
Here.
And Ms. Silver.
Here.
Mr. Sturbins.
Here.
Thank you, Madam
Roll call
Clerk.
complete.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We appreciate it. We do have a full membership of the board present. So happy to see you all here. All right, with that, we will move to public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have public comment this morning signed in?
We do. We have 2 public comment messages this morning that will be entered into the minutes for this meeting.
Okay, and who are those public comments for, Madam Clerk?
Jeff Church and Ferrari Carano.
Okay, McDonald Carano, you mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry, McDonald Carano. Thank
We
you.
all need some Ferrari Carano.
Yeah. Are you already thinking 5 o'clock? Are you 5 o'clock somewhere?
Well, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
It is, and wherever that is, that's where Corey is. That's where we're trying to figure out. Okay, well, we've got those public comments, and we will put those into the record. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Those will be available in the minutes, and those will be distributed to the board as a whole for their reading. All right, we are on to item C, approval of the agenda for the May 28th Board of Directors meeting. And being that it is not a special meeting agenda, it's our regular meeting agenda, but that's okay. The only thing we will make a change to is that yesterday afternoon, I was contacted by Garrett Gordon, who represents P3. The P3 partners, they had asked to have their item pulled this morning for today's meeting. So that item will not be taken under consideration at this time. It'll be pulled and hopefully brought back at a future meeting. So we will pull item H1 off the agenda. So at this time, I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda with the removal of item H1.
I'll make a motion. Mrs. Chair.
I have a motion by Ms. Keel. Do I have a second?
Second.
Jeremy, hold on.
Second by second by Vice Chair Lawson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we're on to item C. This is the approval of the April 3rd, 2020 Board of Directors special meeting minutes. So are there any changes that anybody would need to make to the minutes as posted or any corrections? Seeing none, we will, I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes. Motion from Vice Chair Lawson. Do I have a second?
Second, Andy Chapman.
A second by Andy Chapman. Mr. Chapman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, we're on to item E, E1. This is an update from Interim CEO Jennifer Cunningham. Ms. Cunningham, the floor is yours, ma'am. Jennifer, you got to unmute yourself.
There we go. I just said so many nice things about you, Chair. Thank you. In an effort to keep these meetings brief, we're not planning on having staff updates until we're able to meet in person. So please let me know if you would like us to go back to full staff updates before we are able to meet in person. I do have a few quick things that I wanted to share with you today. As Chair Lucy indicated, in exactly 1 week, our casinos will be opening. And we're preparing our messaging to welcome the travelers back to Reno. Video updates featuring our very own Mike Larraguetta and Art Jimenez have already been recorded, and they will soon be distributed to our meetings and convention and tour and travel databases. We've been watching and monitoring the visitor research carefully, of course, as everyone has. And what we're seeing more and more is that many people are still planning to take their vacations, but they're planning more of a road trip in their automobiles. And according to the research, people are expanding their perception of a viable drive market now to a radius of about 700 miles. To help our future guests plan with confidence, visit renotahoe.com is being updated with easily accessible health and safety information on the destination. As you know, our current fiscal year budget has been cut significantly. However, with the April room tax collections coming in above the budget, I'm excited to announce that for the first time in many years, the RSCVA is nearing completion of a 30-second TV ad. And this is slated to run in the Northern California drive market during the last 2 weeks of June. BVK, our agency, has been an amazing partner. And although earlier this year, we put our contract with them on pause, they have really stepped up to the plate for us, and they created our TV commercial for us for free. And I'd like to show it to everybody now. Please be aware, we just got it yesterday. It's a bit of a rough draft, and we will be scrubbing any visual references to hotel properties. We want to make it as just kind of as generic as we can possibly. It'll take just a few minutes to queue up the video. It's a 30-second spot, and it's a little clunky, but hopefully this will work as planned. So Lori, will you bring up the video, please?
We're not used to this. Sure, the pristine natural beauty and shimmering city lights still glimmer, and we miss you. But in the biggest little city in the world, our ambition never wavers, and yours shouldn't either. We'll eventually get back to a new normal. You know, as normal as Reno Tahoe can possibly be.
Thank you. To end my talking points, I have some more good news to share. We're working with Matador Network, and Matador is the leading global media company for travel. They have millions and millions of followers, and they're teaming up with Southwest Airlines on a partnership with 5 other destinations, including Reno Tahoe, on a co-branded COVID recovery promotional campaign. What all of the 6 destinations have in common is that we're either a mountain or a beach destination. And I think it's pretty cool that we're both. And these are places with built-in social distancing and access to amazing nature. Matador and Southwest, they plan to distribute the content through their mutually enormous network. And the best part is that they're doing it for us for free as a thank you for the work that we've done with them in the past. And they have a lot of video assets from our destinations, so they don't have to incur an expense to travel out and take some great video of our region. And also just they wanted to give back and do something for their travel partners. So I was really excited. This was kind of finalized yesterday. So I wanted to share that with the board. Thank you. That ends my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham. That ad looks great. I think that we need to continue to stress those types of motivation for consumer confidence. I think that's going to be crucial in reopening our community and making sure that people understand that not only are they going to be safe here, but we have the opportunities for them to get outside and participate in outdoor events. So that's going to be great. Thank you. Great work. All right, with that, we will move on to item F1. This is the search-wide search firm update. And with that, I will turn it over to either Mr. Kennedy for an update in regards to the contractual obligations. And then we will go to Mr. Andy Chapman, who the board has chosen as a liaison through search-wide to give an update. Mr. Kennedy.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. As far as contract status, the contract was signed last week. Since that time, Mr. Chapman has had some conversations with Searchwide, and they've sort of mapped a path forward. So with that, I will, unless there's any questions on the contract, I'll defer to Mr. Chapman.
All right, Mr. Chapman.
Great, thank you, and good morning all. I do want to introduce on the Zoom call, we have Mike Gamble and Bill Hanbury, who are our 2 main points of contact with Searchwide, and I'll turn it over to them in just a second here to kind of give an overview of the process and then some of the next steps. We did have a call yesterday to kind of initiate the work plan, which was part of the contract that Mr. Kennedy just spoke about. And we have some completion dates and tasks that we could be going over here in a second. The first and foremost step is really going to be creating a list of stakeholders that the Searchwide team will reach out to and do a quick interview as they start this process. Talking anywhere from maybe 35 to 40 calls. Obviously, they want to interview all of the board members, maybe 20 to 25 other stakeholders within the community, as well as the executive staff on the RSCVA. So with that, I'm just going to let Mike and Bill speak a little bit about the process that they're going to be going through and some of the key steps. And then we'll kind of circle back on some of the next steps. Particularly, I know Mr. Kennedy would like a chance to talk with the Searchwide team about the various elements of the contracts and open meeting law issues, and just making sure we're clear on all those things. So with that, I can turn it over to Mike, I believe, or Bill.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Sandy. Good morning, everyone. And we look forward to working with all of you and really want to thank you for the business and look forward to meeting you either by Zoom or face-to-face. I really do want to thank Andy and Don as well. There was certainly quite a bit of work to get to this point, and we all appreciate their efforts on our behalf and really to get to an agreement, help us get to an agreement. So again, looking forward to working with all of you. I'm excited to have Bill Hanbury by my side. Bill, I'm going to ask him to introduce himself in a minute. He's an industry veteran. He's done quite a bit of work with us in various destinations around the world on some of the searches that we've conducted in the past. And And I'm really delighted to have him working side by side with me on this one. So Bill, why don't you just take a minute and say hello and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And thanks also to the board for giving us a chance to conduct this important search. I think what I bring to the table is the experience of a CEO with several very high performing DMOs. My expertise is very heavy on operations, finance, HR, technology, also solid experience in marketing and sales. But most importantly, I think I can help identify with the board the kind of competencies that you'll need, personal profiles that you'll need in the individual who will be the next CEO. So I'm excited to eventually meet you guys, I guess, on a Zoom call initially, but then face-to-face eventually. And it should be an exciting couple of months as this all unfolds in front of us.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. You know, as Andy mentioned, you know, the first step in our process really is we put the timeline together. We'd like to really get started on that this week, but probably in earnest next week. And the needs assessment is the most important part in our view. And that is an opportunity, of course, to speak to all of you one-on-one and learn more about what's important to you as it relates to background, skill set, characteristics, top priorities, but also to engage with some other stakeholders outside the boardroom and to ask for their feedback. And so, as Andy mentioned, we'd love to have you think about those names, put that list together. We'll handle the logistics for that. And we'd like to really get going on that, you know, if not, you know, of course, we're now at the end of the week tomorrow, but certainly by early next week. Lastly, and certainly very important in our book as well, is talking to some of the team members. We do want to spend some time, Jennifer, with some of the leadership team at the organization. We think that's critically important. But Bill, why don't you talk a little bit about that piece and the importance of those stakeholder discussions before we really start the search?
Yeah, sure, Mike. And yeah, I think both Mike and I feel it's important to get the opinions of board members, key stakeholders, certainly staff. Jennifer, will look forward to meeting you and your senior leadership team. And what we're really searching for are the competencies and management traits that you're going to want in your next CEO. You know, Mike and I may have some great ideas about that, but your ideas are much more important to us than ours. I mean, we really do need to get your valued input on this. You know, we're convinced also that just asking shareholders for their opinions will really display due diligence that's taking place around the search, and the fact that the board is serious about reaching out to community. And so we're gonna make sure we check that box and make sure that everybody feels like anybody that is a key stakeholder feels as if they really did have some say in what our next CEO is going to look like.
Yeah, so from that, we'd come back to all of you with really a draft of the position description, and again, hopefully outlining the common themes and where we heard the consensus. But the critical last step in this process is then for all of you and for all of us to try to get as close as we can on consensus, especially in the areas that I mentioned before: background, skill set, characteristics, top priorities. And we're not all going to agree on all the things. We understand that. We've done quite a few hundred of these, maybe thousands, so we get that. But we do have to find, hey, where do we at least have the most commonality as it relates to the type of CEO candidates that we're looking for, and so that'll be critically important. We'll post the position, but then we'll begin the search, and then you've seen the timeline of how we're going to progress through that. I mean, now that we've started a little later than anticipated, this really could go into August. We're going to do our best to shorten that as best we can, because we have the ability and to really get after this right away. And so we'd like to start to do that. But I think to think about perhaps candidates coming back to all of you once we've really reviewed those with Andy and had a thorough vetting, coming back to you probably around 4th of July holiday timeframe. It maybe slightly a little after that is what we're looking at, to then start to talk about setting up the face-to-face interviews. So that's kind of a snapshot, Andy, I think, of the starting points, if you will, and what we'll be up to for the next few weeks. And love to have any questions. Or Bill, did I miss anything?
Yeah, Mike, I'll just add one thing that, also we're going to take a look at the operations, the management, the marketing efforts of the organization. And that's really in order to give candidates a clear understanding of what the current status of the CVA is. And candidates are going to want to hear that. So we'll look under the hood a little bit there. And I think as this process unfolds, we'll be able to give the board some ideas around best practices and how do you guys compare to other destinations. And really most importantly, whoever's going to be the new CEO, we can give them some observations that will allow him, I think, him or her to have a real head start, hit the ground running approach once they actually begin the new job.
Andy, anything we missed or any additional thoughts?
No, I think that's great. We could, Mr. Chair, we could open it up if the board has any questions, and then I could wrap it up with a couple of next steps that we'll ask the board to complete on this first task of the stakeholders.
Great, thank you. Andy, first of all, I want to thank you for taking the lead on this and being the liaison. I know that's a lot of time and effort you put into it over the last couple of weeks, so I appreciate that. Mr. Hanbury and Mr. Gamble, thank you for joining us today. We really do appreciate your expertise, and we look forward to working with Surcharge to bringing forward the next CEO of the RSCVA. It is a very important job, and we feel that obviously through the board and the participation of the staff and everybody within the community, it is paramount that we get that position filled with the most qualified individual to lead us into the next, what the new normal here within the pandemic will be. And so we look forward to that. And the one thing I do want to stress before we kick off some comments from the other board members was that as you discuss, do your interviews with the stakeholders and conduct those, that we at the board somehow are relayed back those comments and what those, from the outside stakeholders, because we do really want to have this be a community involvement type of process. We really want to understand exactly what the community would like to see in leadership, because there has been such a dark cloud, and I'll just jump out there and say there's been a dark cloud over this position within the RSCVA, not the RSCVA as a whole, but within this position over the last decade. And we want to right that wrong, and I think this is the perfect time to right that wrong, and really take our leadership into a new direction. So we look forward to your expertise and your guidance through the process, and thank you for your participation. With that, I'll open it up to the floor.
Hi, this is Shannon Keel, board member, GM from GSR. I want to thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate all of the comments focused around getting kind of a universal input from not only board members, but people in the community, employees within the RSCVA. I think that is so important to get that communal approach. So I do appreciate that. I also appreciate, I noticed in the agreement, it says you'll do a disc profile, which I also think is very important. So appreciate that, as well as getting to know the operations and the marketing and kind of the culture of within the organization so that you're adequately able to portray that to the candidates. So appreciate all that. Couple questions. One is how it's kind of mentioned in the agreement under, let me get back to the thing here, on terms 1, 2, and 3. So this is a kind of a two-parter question. After we pay the $25,000, if for some reason we decide to stop the search or something happens and we can't continue with your firm, or we just don't do a search anymore, I think it's kind of outlined in number 3, but I just would like some clarification on what is due after the $25,000 if that unfortunately if that happens.
Yeah, good question. It is a retained agreement, and we have made some stipulations in the final agreement, but it would be, again, we haven't really had this happen in 21 years, maybe 1 or 2 instances. And what I can say to you, Shannon, is that we're pretty reasonable. Yes, there's what's in the contract, but it really depends too on how far down the road we are in the work that we've done. If we've done most of our sourcing and interviewing and background checking and reference checking, but we'd expect the entire agreement, quite frankly, to be paid. But again, we'd be open, to really working with you. We've had a great reputation for 21 years because we do business that way. But contractually, quite frankly, you are obligated to a minimum of 62.5 for the contract if it's terminated at any time. But I just want you to know and hear from me the way that we typically approach things like that if they were to happen.
Well, obviously, none of us expect for something like that to happen. But Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Chair, I think we should consider some kind of verbiage in there that talks about in the unforeseeable, unforeseen circumstance if something was to happen that we do not have to pay the full amount. Of course, we need to be reasonable. So certainly if a majority of work was done on your part, it's not like we're gonna, cut and run. But I do think there should be some language in there if something like that does happen. And then my second part of the question is, someone like Jennifer Cunningham or possibly another candidate that if we were to bring to the table, how does somebody like that you have not brought to us, but we have essentially brought to the table, how does that work within the fee structure?
Yeah, again, it's pretty well spelled out in the contract. So I guess I would refer you back to that. But any candidates that express interest should be sent to us. I mean, the reality is we have put a concession in the third payment that I was happy to do. But outside of that, the reality is that all candidates really should be sent to us and vetted through us. As again, we're a retained search firm. We're not going to work on a contingency. So I'm just going to be as honest with you as I can about that. So no matter where the source is, once we start to market it, very hard to track down where the source of that interest came from. Honestly, quite frankly, it likely came from a lot of our marketing. So whether they go to one of you or they go to anyone, our recommendation is going to be a couple of things that once we get into this search, we would ask you not to talk to anyone about the search and to send all interest to us, because that really is an important role for the board to play. That piece of consistency and confidentiality is critically important. And so we really will ask that you not engage. And so if anybody comes with interest, they really should just be sent to us.
And Mr. Gamble, thank you. And Ms. Keel, for your edification, with Mr. Chapman and I, as we went through the contract through Searchwide, we did make those concessions with the Searchwide team, understanding there would be some challenges, but we felt confident that when this board selected Searchwide, that we were going to be all hands off. I understand your frustrations and challenges in regards to a fiscal challenge that we might see in the future, but we felt a prudent expenditure on our behalf to make sure that we get the best individuals and best candidates, and that we wanted to make sure that every candidate was fully vetted equally through the organization, whether they came by way of finding about, whether, for example, Ms. Cunningham, or anybody else that came by way of RSCVA, we still felt that they needed to go entirely through the process to create that even platform for everybody. And so that was one of the decisions that was made by Mr. Chapman and myself when reviewing the contract with Mr. Kennedy. And so that's why those were the decisions that were made.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions for Searchwide in regards to the entire process or timeline? All right, seeing none. All right, thank you. This is for action, but I think that we have given plenty of direction to Mr. Chapman, and he will be constantly filling us in as a liaison through the process, working with Mr. Gamble and Mr. Hanbury as this goes forward. Gentlemen, we want to thank you once again for your continued service and willingness to work with the RSCVA to find us our next candidate. Please be Yes, Mr. Chapman.
Just
go ahead.
One thing that we are asking the board to do, and we're hoping we could do this by 5 a.m. tomorrow, we would like each board member to provide 5 to 7 names of stakeholders within the community. And certainly we'll end up with some overlap there, which is fine. And some of the areas that we've talked about with Mike and Bill and their team, some of the other stakeholders, obviously casino operators, and they could be CEO level or maybe director of communications or director of government relations type positions would be great. We've talked about airport authority, either board members or staff potentially, economic development. looking into our tech world that we have been expanding obviously down in the Reno market. And is there some tech opportunity to look at some of those folks? We could probably look at the ASM organizations, and that could be part of the senior leadership team that we want to be interviewing as well. We've talked about the university structure and maybe getting a dean or a provost from the university. So those are the types of people we're looking for again. And Mike, you can weigh in on this if you'd like, but folks that do have some type of connection or an interest or a foot in the game, so to speak, in what the RSCVA does. So we would like the board to put together some of that, and certainly staff as well could look at that for us. And I'm hoping by 5 a.m. tomorrow, and I don't know the best process, Mr. Kennedy, if you want to weigh in on that, if they could maybe send them to me, or we could put them together. And again, we do believe that there would be some overlap, but what we're trying to do is get our stakeholders down to somewhere between 20 and 30 individuals for these folks to speak, for Mike and his team to speak to.
Mr. Chapman, what I would recommend that Mr. Gamble, do you have an email list compiled for the board at this time?
I think we do. Yeah.
Okay. Would you do me a favor and shoot at the conclusion of this meeting, or by the time we get off, if you could shoot an email out to all the board members with that request, and have them reply directly to you so that you can compile that list, that we take the middleman out and that it goes directly to Surchwide. And then once that list is compiled, that you can confer that with Mr. Chapman and make sure that that is complete in a way that is formidable for everybody to look at. Is that okay?
Yeah, happy to do it. Yep, that makes sense.
Okay, that would be my recommendation if there isn't any challenges to that. All right, saying none. All right, Mr. Chapman.
And then just the last piece, I know that Mr. Kennedy would like the legal folks to have a conversation with Mike as well, just to talk about open meeting laws and some of the criteria that we've placed in there as we prospect these candidates. So I know Ben would like to reach out and have that conversation shortly as well.
Great. Okay.
Okay. Great. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. We really do appreciate your work.
Thank you, folks. Looking forward to it. Appreciate it.
Right.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
This is for, like I said, this is for possible action, but I think we've given plenty of direction. No need to make a motion at this time, so we will move on to item F2. This is review, discussion, and possible action regarding revisions to the RSCVA harassment and non-discrimination policies. So with that, I will turn this over to Ms. Molly Rizak and Sherry Neal for that. So Ms. Rizak.
Good morning. This is Molly Rizak for the record. In your packet is a memo from Ms. Neal, as well as proposed revisions to the harassment and non-discrimination policies. As you know, the president and CEO of the RSCVA is the only employee of the RSCVA that reports to the board of directors. And based upon comments from the last board meeting, we were asked to review and revise the harassment and non-discrimination policies to address how complaints against the president and CEO should be handled. The harassment policies are redlined in your packet and provide that if there is a complaint that any employee feels that the president or CEO has violated these policies, they have the ability to bring that matter to the attention of any manager or supervisor, or the director of human resources, or to the chairman of the board, the vice chairman of the board, or the chairman of the board's executive and legislative committee. Thereafter, those individuals would bring that complaint to the chairman and vice chairman or vice chairman of the board. If that occurs, the chairman and the vice chairman would review the complaint, and after consultation, the chairman would determine how the proper avenue to notify the entire board of the complaint, as well as make other determinations related to placing the president CEO on administrative leave and directing the investigation as necessary. So those procedures are now outlined specifically in the policies and are there for your review and possible action and approval.
Yeah, I do have one correction that I'd like to make, or suggestion, Ms. Rizak, on the policies. Can we just take this is this is kind of just new world stuff, but I would take out chairman and just make it chair and vice chair.
Will do.
Thank you.
Actually, Molly, this is Hillary. Let me ask you, why is it chair and vice chair? Other boards I sit on, if there is a complaint, it's any board member. If that board member, it can go to any board member.
Do you mean that management can take it to any board member?
Yes, like you know, some employee comes to a board member.
We can absolutely revise it. Okay, absolutely. Yes. If you would like to see that change, I am more than happy to make that revision as well, and make it so that any member of management may make it to any board member. And then the further to that would, if any member of the board receives a complaint, that then they would notify. It's probably easiest if they notify the chairman so that it can be notified to easily notified to the entire board in the proper manner. If that works for you.
Well, I'm just, you know, I'm going to be the elephant in the room again. The issue that I have is, like, let's say during the Fields Alone situation, I was getting complaints into my office, and they were coming in, and they sort of just, you know, floated out there to nowhere land. So there needs to be a better way that if a board member, and right now you have complaints that can go to the executive staff and to chairman and vice chair, but not the rest of us. So you need to give the rest of the board a process in order that the complaints that come in are at least, you know, have some way where the entire board has a process in place, and also that those complaints maybe are shared with the entire board, because that's what I noticed is it was very fragmented, Molly.
And that is that's what I'm attempting to do here, is that if a board member does receive a complaint, then that complaint would be processed in that way where the chairman, after consultation, would notify the entire board of directors, determine whether the president and CEO should be placed on administrative leave, and direct the investigation. With the revision that any board member, may take a complaint. And then if they receive a complaint, that it is then notified to the chairman and vice chairman, and that those two, after consultation, the chairman notifies the entire board and makes those decisions.
Molly, I would say HR. I would say Molly, HR or,
yeah,
you know.
I would agree with Hillary that, I mean, if any board member has received a complaint, instead of going to the chair or vice chair, that it immediately goes to legal counsel and HR, and that HR would distribute a call or some sort of communication to the entire board for reference or a discussion. I would change that so that it doesn't necessarily we don't have to go through this long, gregarious process, that it does go to the entire board for discussion in an attorney-client situation, because it would be an HR complaint.
I think board members should have options as well as, you know, our executive staff or our employees, where it's not just the chair or the vice chair. It needs to be HR or no different than how the rest of the employees are. You know, I brought my complaint to legal, and it went nowhere. So I want other options, please.
My only concern is that human resources reports in the organizational chart, human resources reports to the CEO, and that can be cause for concern if the complaint is against the person that they report to. So it is inherent in the issue with respect to that. if you can have it that it goes to HR and then HR is directed to, in the policy itself, or it goes to legal counsel and an attorney-client in an email, it is notified to the full board. We can make revisions to this and bring it back to the board in the next meeting to see if that addresses those concerns.
All right, that would be good. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Any other changes or recommendations to this policy? So that when it is brought back, we can do fully affirm the process and move forward. All right, Ms. Rezac, if you'll work on those, we won't take any action on this time, and just giving you direction on that. Is there any direction that anybody else would like to add?
The only comment I'd like to make is that we add language about this proceeding in a timely manner. I think if someone is making a complaint, there's an obligation that HR immediately respond and take it up the food chain, as it were, rather quickly, so that we're not caught in the situation we were, where it was months before an investigation was concluded and action was taken. So I'd like to see some language suggesting that it is immediately reported to the board, or however Molly wants to structure the language. I just think language to the effect that things are handled in a timely, efficient manner is very important.
Definitely. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. All right, Mr. Rezac, I think you've got enough direction, and we'll work with you on getting that redrafted. Okay. We will close item F2 and move on to G, which is this is G1. This is our public hearing. So we'll open the public hearing for the review and adoption of the RSCVA 2020-2021 fiscal year budget. This is resolution 588. And with that, we will turn it over to Mr. Chisel for a review and public hearing on the fiscal budget.
Good morning. Janine Stewart and I are here with the CEO, Jennifer Cunningham, Mike Largetta from Sales, Art Jimenez from Tourism Sales, and Michael Day from ASM to present the proposed budget for fiscal year 2021. Is that, no. There we go. Okay. Yes, you all are aware, this is a very unique budget. In a normal year, we begin developing the budget in January, which we did with the CIP and revenue projections. From there, we work with the individual departments, the CEO properties, and ASM to begin building the budget. This year, due to the pandemic, all the work had to be restarted in March and again in April. This budget is being driven by a very conservative approach to room tax revenue. No one can predict the impact that COVID will have on our revenue, but we have to build a realistic budget and not spend money we don't or won't have. So it is a very conservative estimate of the revenue that we see. We are very optimistic that we will exceed those revenue projections, but we had to build something that was would be able to meet our expenditures on a monthly and on a yearly budget. As revenues exceed budget, we will look to augment the budget for future needs, such as bringing back staff, increasing our marketing and sales efforts. So what is being presented is the entire fiscal year budget. However, as I said, we presented to the Finance Committee revenues and expenditures down to the month, and this budget meets those cash flow and budgetary restrictions on a monthly and yearly basis. Overall, this budget will provide us with an ending fund balance above the minimum 4% required by the state. We did present the budget in depth to a workshop of the Finance Committee on May 7th. The Finance Committee approved a recommendation to the board with the following adjustments that are included in the proposed budget for you today. One was the executive search firm had originally been budgeted as $75,000 in next fiscal year. $25,000 was moved to this year and $50,000 for next fiscal year. The second item was the addition of $150,000 for the BID. And the third was recommendation to have a discussion of vendor contracts with the entire board that's under the board items. As we get to those individual departments, I will highlight those items during the presentation. Also in your budget book is a more detailed look, including a written narrative of the budget process, a consolidated summary, revenue numbers, detail of each department in the general fund, as well as our debt service, capital service, and internal service fund. And finally, the state budget document, which I will then ask each of our board members to sign. I'll be sending it around at the end of the presentation if the budget is approved for your written approval, as that is needed for the Department of Taxation. All right, strategic plan. This highlights the financial policies as adopted in the strategic plan. For the prior 2 years, we had met all those financial policies that the board had approved. Not surprising, in this year we will not be meeting them, but the intent is that the following years we will be back on track. I'd like to point out, due to these strong financial policies that the board adopted, we came through this pandemic, or into this pandemic, in a very strong financial position with over $13.5 million of cash. I'd also like to highlight that the authority board and staff acted swiftly to reduce expenditures beginning in March in preparation for these difficult times so that we can weather the storm. All right, in the fiscal year 2021 budget, we're projecting overall revenues of only $25.8 million, which is a 51% decrease from the fiscal year 20 budget, which was $52 million. Again, it is important that we don't over budget revenues and expenditures and get in a position where we spend money we don't have. We are optimistic that we think we will be exceeding these revenues, particularly in our room tax collections as we go forward. Please note, for the facility revenues, the amounts are based upon events that are currently booked and anticipated. If they should not occur, there is a corresponding expenditure that will be adjusted as well, but these are for events that are booked and are planning to come. And next, just to give you, unfortunately, a historic perspective of our room tax and where it was going. As you can see, we were projecting for this year about $37 million in room tax, and now it's looking at about $26 million. And just to give you an idea of what we're projecting as percentage of occupancy of cash rooms overall, this was a budget for the current year, and this is fiscal year 2021. Again, it's very pessimistic. We at the authority believe that we're going to exceed those numbers here in this region, and we're going to do a lot better. But again, as I keep saying, we don't want to spend money we don't have, so we're looking at a very conservative approach to our budget. I'll quickly go through. All of you know about how room tax is distributed and collected. It's based on different regions, jurisdictions, and then that money is distributed to others. It's not just to the RSCVA, it also goes to other entities, City of Reno, City of Sparks, Washoe County, and State of Nevada. And this is what we're projecting the room tax distribution for this coming fiscal year. These are our overall expenditures that we're budgeting, $29.8 million. This budget is going to be using about $4 million of our fund balance as we go through the fiscal year. Remember, we went into this in a strong financial position, so we have those resources to carry us through the next fiscal year. Supplies and services, which is one of the larger categories here, is about 87% supplies and services. Of that, $8.9 million is for the facilities. Again, as I've mentioned earlier, those are based on the shows and events occurring and the revenues that are tied to them. If there is a change, these will be adjusted as we go into the fiscal year. Also, as revenues exceed budget, we're going to look to augment our promotion and advertising in other areas as we go through the year. And just to give you an idea of what our budget was compared to this current year that was adopted, as you can see, overall, we're cutting over 47% from our budget from this year to next year. One of the things that there's been increases in, or we're projecting, is our health insurance. As we have reduced our number of staff, we're under the 50 limit that changes our insurance components. So that'll probably go up as we go through it. Next, I'm just going to kind of quickly go through each of the departments and what their budgets are and what the decrease are. I would also point out that as we have reduced staff and reduced our budgets, we have looked to consolidate a couple of our departments to try to save resources and to make things a little more simple. Executive office is one of those. It used to be that HR was part of the executive office. We're moving that back. As you know, we are had furloughed one of the HR positions. So it is a department of one, which doesn't make a lot of sense. Overall, what you're seeing is a reduction of $280,000 in the executive office. We did budget the CEO position commencing in December. Not sure when that would start. We also, and that was a $240,000 salary level. We also budgeted an increase in unemployment expense as the number of employees on furlough. It will impact our unemployment expense through the DETR. Any questions so far? Please holler as I go through. Board of Directors, services include for outside services include legal services. This is where the Finance Committee recommended adding the second payment of the $50,000 for the BID. That was partly paid this year, and part was per the board direction of April was to be looked at for next fiscal year. And in addition, $100,000 for next fiscal year's BID payment. So that's that $150,000 you see there. Second item to note was the movement of the executive search firm, reducing it from 75, so just moving fiscal years. There's also $5,000 in here for interview travel for an executive and $10,000 for potential relocation expense. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them now. Okay, moving on, finance. We combined mail service and room tax departments into finance. They reported to the finance department anyways, and as we have reduced, to be honest, the mail service department's budget for this fiscal year was going to be only $9,000, so it doesn't make sense to have it as a department, so they were combined. The increase in supplies and services is a direct relation to the insurance expense going up. You will notice that's the next item on the board agenda is our P&C, our property and casualty liability insurance for the agency. And unfortunately, due to the market of insurance, it has gone up. We have worked with the insurance company and they've reduced their brokerage fees, but the underwriters have increased the rates. So IT, the increase in supplies and services was due to increased software licensing and the consolidation of network and communications into that department. Other than that, we have reduced expenses across the board, so it has also reduced as a department. Convention sales, that department, we reduced a fairly sizable amount. went down 58% in the overall budget. As you can see, the number of positions, 12 were furloughed or had early retirements, leaving 11 positions in convention sales. Some of the travel and entertainment and promotion and advertising are based on shows that we attend. As the shows do or do not occur, if they do not occur, we will not, of course, expend those resources. Tourism sales, 68% reduction in their budget. Not much to say other than they have done everything they can to reduce costs. Marketing has taken a 71% decrease. A lot of that is in the promotion advertising area. Also like to point out that the Air Service Fund is no longer funded in that. Again, as revenues exceed budget, we would look to increase marketing as one of the areas of primary concern for us to increase our marketing in air service and other areas. Facilities, as you all know, we have 4 facilities that we operate. They are managed by ASM Global, formerly SMG Worldwide. This is the 3rd year for ASM. The facility revenues, as noted, is based upon booked events, and expenditures are tied to those events. If they don't occur, we'll adjust. The ASM management fee is included, but no incentive costs are included in those in the budget. Overall, they are fairly large buildings. ASM has done a very quick job. Starting in March, they furloughed, I believe, over 140 of their staff. The facilities are operating on a skeleton crew, such as a convention center. There's only a couple individuals there at any given time. The Reno Event Center is still operating as a shelter, and the Livestock Event Center is operating as a drive-through COVID testing, so they are operational. The bowling stadium is operating with the skeleton crew. And have the details of each of the departments in the budget. And again, there's more detail in your budget book if you would like to go through that. Finally, for the general fund, we've got a couple more items. Contingency, due to the reduced size of the budget, we did reduce the contingency amount we put in the budget from 400 to 200. It historically has not been touched other than 2 years ago it was touched for $350,000. The apportionment to Incline Village Crystal Bay Visitors Authority, that is tied to revenue. So as revenue increases and decreases, that is adjusted. Just to give you a highlight of the tourism surcharge that comes in as a separate item. Again, most of that is budgeted for marketing and for sales as we go into this fiscal year 2021 budget. Debt service, we still have outstanding debt. The 1999 cabs are actually paid off July 1st, so they will be paid off this next fiscal year. And as you remember, we refinanced a portion of the 2011s back in the end of fiscal year 2019, which saved us money in our payments. So as you can see, our bond payments have decreased rather dramatically. Also, part of the decrease was the fact that we used to defease a portion of the bond based on how much room tax collection there are. Due to the decline in room tax, there won't be a defeasance this year. The internal insurance fund is basically a internal fund where the resources from the payroll go into the internal service fund to fund the health insurance and the workers' comp. So it's an in and an out. Not much to talk about there. The capital fund, we only budgeted $240,000 in there. Looking back several years, that's kind of the average we have been looking at for emergency repairs for the buildings. We're not looking at any enhancements or improvements to any of the buildings in this fiscal year. We're putting everything on hold. As you know, we canceled the many capital projects in March of this year. So we're hoping as future resources come in better, we will again look at improving our facilities as we move forward. And that is the budget as quickly as in a nutshell as I could get. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
This is Shannon Keel. Chairman, is it okay to proceed?
Oh, please, let's do an open floor.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation and getting through it efficiently as possible. I'm more about comments than necessarily questions. I truly do believe that, as I think hopefully all of us do, that actions for the revenues and the occupancy will be much, much higher than what we are presenting here. We're already seeing some really good statistics and analysis and response from people wanting to come back. So I'm optimistic that business will be better than what we're projecting here, but I understand that you wanted to take a conservative approach. I am concerned about the 75% cut in marketing, which I think the overall budget is cut 50%, marketing's being cut 75%. Of course, the mission of the RSCVA is to attract people to the destination. Obviously, we have to make tough decisions given this economic crisis that we're in, and certainly things have to be cut. But we also, as you know, we still need to market. We just have to market differently. Jennifer talked about the drive market being so important now. So I am hoping that once we start to see things pick up a little bit, and I think you mentioned this, that we will make sure we get back to marketing and get people to the region.
Ms. Cunningham.
Comment.
Go ahead, Ms. Cunningham.
Shannon, I thank you for your comments. I really appreciate it. And yes, as Robert Chisel said, it will be a priority. That number is so much higher because it includes the 1.5 million for the air service, that line item. So it's a little distorted in that it included that account that we have put to zero. And Mr. Chisel and I had a discussion about it this morning. We plan to, should we have an opportunity with new air service, we'll figure out how to support new flight into our destination. But that kind of made that 75% look a lot more egregious than some of the.
Do you know what the percentage is without the air service? Just out of curiosity.
Jennifer, we didn't miss that. We missed that. You muted before we.
No, Robert's looking it up.
Yes, I'm looking it up as we speak.
It was telepathic. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
It would probably be about a 67% decrease, unfortunately, without the air service. So.
Yeah, still pretty significant.
Yeah, the marketing budget is back to about 2016 levels. And part of it is that, there is no flexibility in some areas such as debt service, which we have decreased, but you can't, it's a fixed cost. So what you're looking at is reducing is more of your variable costs. So.
Yeah, and I think that just kind of drives home, the issues that we have as an organization with so much of the money going to debt service and other things as opposed to, doing what our primary goal is, which is marketing the region. So, we already all know this. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer or anything, but especially in times like this, it just highlights, what our core mission is supposed to be. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to do that, but fingers crossed, the revenues do come back and we can make marketing the priority. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Silver.
Yes, I have a comment. I really appreciate all the hard work that was done by the Finance Committee. I know Ed and Don and others spent significant time drilling down. It's not normal, I think, for a board to get into this level of detail in terms of the budget, but I understand these aren't normal times. With that said, I still want to remain on the record that having furloughed so many employees and eliminated positions throughout the organization, that then the double whammy of taking a pay cut for the entire organization does not seem appropriate to me. I don't know of any quasi-government agency or government agency at this point in time, local agency, that has done these kind of draconian cuts, much less than asked for a pay cut from the remaining employees. So I would like to suggest that if we exceed revenues as predicted by Robert, and the hope that we all have that that occurs, that these pay differentials be restored by year end. It's just a comment. I'm not asking for a vote at this time, but I think it's something we should seriously encourage. We've asked the employees to take on additional duties. I understand that many of you who are with casinos have seen dramatic reductions as well, but we've asked 28 or so employees to remain. Retention is an issue right now in this community. There are many employers who are not going to be able to bring back their employees due to the high payout on unemployment insurance. And I think that we want to retain the RSCVA employees and encourage them to work hard and diligently through this. But my recommendation is that if we meet or exceed the revenue numbers that Robert has predicted, that we restore those pay decreases by December 31st. Just my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Silver. I appreciate that. Mr. Lawson, as the chair of the Finance Committee, and the Finance Committee is constructed by board members Korenstein, Sturbins, and Mr. Chapman. Do you have any comments in regards to the budget that you'd like to add at this time?
I think just for clarification, we took the hard approach because, you know, in the beginning, we were looking at running out of money after the first of the year. We since found some ways to get around that, and I think we're going to be fine. I think it's our intent as the Finance Committee, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone on the Finance Committee, is that if we don't cut right away, we can't ever catch up again. So we're cutting right away, not knowing what the future holds, but it's absolutely our intent to bring our employees back as quickly as possible and to restore their pay levels. That to me is a priority because people are what makes our organization work, obviously. We can have all the buildings in the world if we don't have people out there filling them up with guests. So that's our intent, I think, was just to make the hard decision, get it over with, and then we'll work to claw our way back to where we were.
So if I understand, Mr. Chair, if I may, if I understand, Ed, there is the intent, if not the formal process of restoring people to their pay prior to these cuts. At what point in time? When would you decide to do that?
I think as we look and see if the occupancy doubles, obviously our revenue is going to double. That makes it a lot easier to make those decisions. First, I'd like to see all the employees come back that are furloughed, and then to address the pay decreases. But I think if Robert's correct, and I'm not as bullish as he is, that we can make this happen very quickly. However, if it doesn't happen quickly, and I think there's a stigma out there that I'm okay if I'm the first one to stay in a hotel room, but if I'm the 10th one to stay in a hotel room, I'm not as likely to maybe travel. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just some of the things anecdotally I'm hearing. So we take a very conservative approach, but obviously employees and their benefits are number one in my mind, to go back first.
I'd like to just add. I'd like to add one comment to this, remembering that we're in the midst of this CEO search, and hopefully there will be a new CEO, and maybe it will be Jennifer. But the idea, I think, is that the board would take a lot of comfort in the recommendation of the new CEO, because to me, that's why we're doing the search, to figure out who has the vision, the understanding, and the organization should reflect what the new CEO thinks the organization should look like. And the board should either agree with it, make some suggestions, adjustments, etc. So I just wanted to add that this is another moving part to this analysis that I think is very important if we're going to have somebody with authority and the ability to move the organization forward. We need to let the CEO conceive the organization and run it in that person's, vision. And hopefully that's somebody we've already signed off on and have confidence will, be a strong leader. Thank you.
Now, I'd like to add a comment too. As we move through this entire process, we've seen unprecedented situations that we've never seen or experienced here in Northern Nevada ever before. Our entire state is seeing unprecedented challenges in regards to almost 30% unemployment across the state, which is has never been experienced here in our community. And as we reopen Nevada and we continue on the roadmap to recovery, the challenges are going to be phased. Whether the pain is going to be less and less day by day, hopefully with the best case scenario of a return of tourism. And I think it's crucial that we have a balanced approach. We still need to continue to market and entice people to come to the region and provide them a safe, secure place to recreate. However, at the same time, to Vice Chair Lawson's point, I think there is a stigma out there that is challenging individuals from making that movement into the region. And so it's going to be a balanced approach. It's going to take a lot of lift from this board and the executive team and the entire staff at the RSCVA to help collectively with the entire region to help create that confidence, that consumer confidence again, because it is paramount to not just to the tourism industry, but those secondary and tertiary businesses, and which many of you represent many of them, to their success. And so as we move through, we need to continue to stay a unified approach, but it has to be a cautious and conservative approach. And I think what the finance committee, the difficult decisions the finance committee made and presented to this board were probably not the most, desirable, but probably the most necessary at the time. And look, I think there's nobody on this board that would not like us to see us come back to what that normal was previous to the pandemic. However, it's going to be that challenge, and I think how we move forward and how we do that balanced is going to be the best way about doing that. So, first of all, I want to thank the finance board for their recommendations, but it has been challenging, and we will work diligently to make sure that everybody was restored to what they were previously, to the best of our abilities moving forward. Any other comments?
I think Mark.
So this is Mark Servant. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I just want to thank the staff. I think they did a really good job. They made very difficult decisions in a very challenging time. And I think, to Ms. Silver's comments, I think they're very appropriate, and I have shared the same concern. There were some things that we did discuss with the staff about looking at, when things do return back to some type of a normalcy, that we would look at some type of a bonus for lost income, with the priority of trying to get team members back as soon as we possibly could. We still are not being recommended to travel by the CDC or the White House, and I believe the governor is still asking for a 14-day quarantine for people that cross the border. Now, I don't think people will do that, but it does put a lot of uncertainty into the future, and I think that was where the committee came from, trying to be very, very aggressive as soon as we possibly can, so when the time comes and things do start to pick up, we have the ability to react, and then we can come back and take care of the staff that did such a good job and hopefully return those team members. So I hope that adds a little bit of color to our thoughts. Thank you.
One thing I would ask of the board and of staff is that, especially Mr. Chisel, as we move forward, a prioritized list of those variable costs that we can reinstall upon the budget increases as it continues to increase, what that prioritized list would look like from staff, whether it's employees, whether it's marketing costs, those variable costs that we've cut. I would like to see a prioritized list of what you intend to bring back in a timely manner as those revenues return.
We will do that.
Okay, any other comments from the board in regards to the budget at this time? This is a public hearing. So Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment in regards to our budget at this time?
No, there are no public comments in regards to this item number.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. So we will close public comment on the public hearing. Bring it back to the board. I am looking for a motion to approve and adopt the resolution 588 to adopt the 2020-2021 fiscal year budget.
So moved.
I have a motion from Vice Chair Lawson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mark Sturban.
I have a second from Mark Sturbans. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously with all board members voting. And Ms. Carlson, you'll have to get that around to the board members so that they can sign that. Remember, everyone will have to, all board members will have to execute this document so that we can get it to the state. All right, item G2. This is a review and possible approval of the RSCVA fiscal year 2020-21 property, general liability, automobile, umbrella, workers' compensation, public officials liability, crime and internet liability, and associated insurance coverage. So with that, Ms. Cunningham or Mr. Chisel, do you want to take this?
This is Robert Chisel. Basically, our insurance policies are on a fiscal year basis and they're going to expire July 1st. We went back to our broker, USI Insurance, and they marketed the policies with multiple insurers and looked at different quotes for our property insurance. In your packet kind of is a summary sheet showing our liability coverage, our deductibles. Our general liability deductible is $10,000, which is a very low deductible, but is very good. We looked at possible savings as raising those deductibles or other avenues and found that this was the most cost-effective insurance coverage we could get. As I mentioned during the budget presentation, this is budgeted in that budget and for the fiscal year 2021. It's an overall increase of about $43,000, $43,885. We did work with the broker. They did reduce their broker fee by 50%. So that was taken into account. It is important that we have proper insurance to insure our buildings and our liability. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any questions in regards to the insurance policy and the direction given by staff?
Yeah, I have a question. Excuse me, Don Kornstein. So Robert, I'm curious why our premium has gone up in the context of this pandemic when the flow of people and the utilization of these facilities will go down dramatically. Kind of like if you think about what the car insurance companies have been doing, they've been giving courtesy, or maybe not courtesy, but they've been giving premium reductions of 15 to 25% because people are not driving as much. When people are not driving as much, there are not as many accidents, et cetera. It would seem to me that we should go push back one more time. I mean, we can give an approval. I assume, I don't want to get into the mechanics of this, but for the board meeting, but I think we need to push a little bit harder and ask why, if our facilities are not being utilized to the extent they have been historically, we're actually getting a premium increase as opposed to at minimum, no increase. Thank you.
Well, part of it is being not driven by us. A lot of it is the P&C, the property and casualty market, due to the heavy losses that the insurance companies have experienced over the years. For large commercial clients, they're raising their fees, their rates. So it's the underwriters. It's not so much our risk. It's the overall property and casualty market as a whole. I will go back and we will push back with our broker and see if we can get any more savings as we go forward. But, you know, I'd caution, we've already done that a couple of times, but we will go back. They did note that they had already adjusted their expenditures for ASM taking over. ASM has absorbed some general liability as they are managing the facility. So we did see a decrease in prior years because of that. So they did note that there was about a 3.5% decrease on the general liability line of business. So they are going to look at also a premium credit, and we'll see if we can do something with the automobile and our property insurance.
Mr. Chisel, I have a question. How long have we been with USI?
We've been with USI, it's about 4 years, I believe now.
Okay.
And they go out to different broker or different underwriters and try to price the book, as we say. Right now, most of it is through Travelers. Our main property is through Alliant Property Insurance. It's a pooled group here in Northern Nevada, and that has been providing the best rates overall. So.
And when we selected USI, I'm assuming when we selected USI, we went through a normal RFP process to select them as an insurance broker, or was that a decision?
Yeah, I believe it was. It was prior to my arrival, but we have been looking at going out to bid for it again. Due to all that has been going on this year, we did not go out to bid this year. We just continued on, but we'll probably go out to bid next year for our broker.
Okay. Any other discussions?
I'm in the wrong business.
Yeah, you and me both. All right. Seeing no further discussion in regards to insurance on our policies, and I think you've gotten direction from Mr. Kornstein. Mr. Kornstein, would you like to make that in the form of a motion that you approve the insurance costs at this time, but are requesting further push for adjustments?
Yeah, I'm happy to just dovetail with what you just said, Chair. So.
Perfect. I'll make the motion, and if you'll second it, we'll go forward like that.
Sounds good.
All right, so I'll make the motion to approve with the go back and ask for those adjustments based upon the pandemic. Mr. Kornstein is the second to that motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have been here for an hour and 22 minutes. So we're moving pretty quickly here. We're doing all right. All right, we have pulled item H1 at this time. So we're actually to our final kind of agenda item for the day, which is board member comments regarding any future items for meetings. Is there any board member comments at this time? Seeing none. I do want to come back and talk about, I would like probably at the next meeting, in the June meeting, we have a couple of different things that are going to have to be discussed in the June meeting, but I want to get a report based upon the reopening of our resort properties, how those properties are doing, if we can get some kind of feedback from Mr. Jimenez in regards to tourism and what that looks like, and then also from Mr. Larragueta, potential sales. We do have the bowlers that have talked about coming back and are coming back in September to our downtown properties. We are going to try to retain what special events we still have in the community based upon the reopening of our community. What that looks like and how RSCVA can play a very influential role in making sure that the community and the tourists to our community feel safe and secure. So if we can get those types of plans from the executive team in regards to outreach, sales, and tourism, what that looks like, and then ASM, your ability to make sure while those conventions are here and in our properties that they are well taken care of and that they have the best post-pandemic experience. That is really important to me. So if we can have that discussion at the June meeting in regards to that plan and what that rollout looks like and how we're doing thus far in late June, that would be great. Any other comments from the board members?
If I could add one, Mr. Chair, Andy Chapman.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and I know that Ms. Cunningham and the team are working on kind of that reopening plan, and given the presentation that she provided at the beginning, obviously we understand what budgets currently look like, but I think we do need to be prepared, kind of following along with what you're saying, Mr. Chair, on the reopening plan. But it would be good to kind of see what that overall encompassing effort looks like, maybe in a 30, 60, and 90-day profile. And I know that Ms. Cunningham and the team are working on that, but maybe we can have a little bit of a presentation of what that looks like as well.
Yeah, and I think what we should be doing too, Mr. Chisel, one of the things I would ask for is that because that so many decisions that we're making in regards to budgetary processes and bringing employees back and how we're going to restructure and revamp our budget going forward are based upon revenues, is that your team work as quickly as possible. I know we are at least 30 days delayed in regards to room tax and what that looks like in occupancy, but how quickly we can turn those numbers around and get those back to the board for some sort of kind of analysis would be great.
We will do that. We are watching the numbers every day, as you know.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Anything else? I want to thank, once again, I want to thank the staff. I know this has been a trying time and challenging time, but you have been working tirelessly, I know, against all odds to keep our organization afloat. We want to thank you from the board standpoint. We understand how challenging it is. Being many of us are in the industry and are seeing the same challenges you are, but we know that it's time. This is a challenging time for you. And look, your board is here to support you in any way, shape, or form. So with that, seeing Ms. Keel.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just thought of one more thing real quick. As we work the reopening plan and as the different jurisdictions around Reno, Tahoe figure out how they are reopening their areas, such as North Tahoe versus South Tahoe and things like that. I think it's important, if we haven't done so already, that we communicate this on our website. I know that that's one of the biggest questions that at least GSR gets, which is what is going to be open, what's not going to be open, what is going to be open, and what can I expect when I come to the region. So hopefully Jennifer and the team can work on a plan on getting that message out.
We are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion from the board? All right, seeing none. All right, we will close this item and bring it back. Final public comment, Ms. Carlson, has there any public comment been brought forward to the board?
No, we don't. We just have the two public comments from item B, which are from Mr. Jeff Church and Mr. Michael Pawnee with McDonald Carano. I will add those to the meeting minutes.
Okay, so Mr. Pawnee's letter will be placed on the record with Mr. Church's comments. See no other further public comments. We do appreciate everybody's participation today. Everybody, please stay safe. Enjoy your Thursday. Take care of yourselves. Be safe. Be humble to everybody. And we are adjourned, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.